So what paragraph do you want to have a look at?
It's the last sentence in the third paragraph.
This is my
The commercial areas are not on the western side of the street, they're on the eastern side, and the commercial areas, I think if you're going to tidy that up earlier on in the policy document, you need to tidy it up there, please.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else, people? 49. No? 50?
Mr. Chairman, this is another one of those
Photographs?
plans that could be adapted, I think, a little more clearly to reflect what has been discussed here. And I would suggest if you just take out anything from Robert Street South, you'll probably be okay. Just leave Lake Terrace and Ruapehu Street at the bottom right-hand corner just floating, and just take everything else out so it's just blank. Because that has not been resolved, that road going right up and next to Robert Street and then turning round. It's the same one as we dealt with earlier.
We're going to come back to this problem.
It's too definitive for the stage that we're at. That whole area has to be yet planned and go through another process.
Absolutely.
That's all I'm suggesting.
About doing a master plan for that area.
We're going to come back to this, guys, near the end, and I want you to dig out the resolutions if you haven't already got them.
Yes.
About this particular end, and whatever that resolution says.
There aren't any.
States. Well, I'm just saying, if there is, Mr. Gibbs, I've got a feeling there is one, isn't there? But anyway, dig it out.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could just make the same comments for the map on the other page, on page 51.
The same.
We're going to page 52 now.
And this is where the text is about it, Mr. Chairman.
That's correct.
On the second and third paragraph. I think we've got to be very, very careful about that as to how it's worded, because it's still, the people who were here sat here and talked at length about how this was really important and a really high priority to get this public space tidied up. A very attractive, terribly attractive entrance to the town from the south. This was key to encouraging investor confidence and retail confidence and everything else confidence for the future. But this does not reflect that. This goes into real detail.
Mr. Gibbs, like I told you at lunchtime, dig out there's a resolution on here, etc., and those notes. We'll come back to these 3 pages at the end, and once we get right through to the end, then we'll come back. Now, I'm not going to say anything on the Civic Hut because that's parked up. We're going to page 54. Tongariro domain.
Yeah, the fourth paragraph down on page 54.
Yes.
It just comes in and says the improvement of the facilities on the domain to allow for better management of events. It sort of sticks out. What do you mean, improvement of the facilities?
It was written in a general way so that any changes to the civic heart section wouldn't necessarily impact on this section.
But he said, I think that's quite a strong sentence. The improvement of the facilities on the domain to allow for better management of events, both small and large, will have a direct economic benefit for the town centre. What do you mean? Sorry.
When drafting that, we had the extension of the Great Lakes Centre in mind. Well, I had the extension
Well,
of the
perhaps
Great
you
Lakes
ought to
Centre.
say that.
But we were very conscious that you haven't passed a resolution talking about the extension of the Great Lakes Centre.
But it sort of hangs up in the air without some sort of a definition.
So maybe this is one of those areas where there is a consequential amendment following on from...
Mr. Carroll, is there any problem with leaving that last paragraph out completely?
Yes, that would be best.
Until the civic heart has been dealt with. Councillor McKellar?
Mr. Chairman, I frankly wouldn't agree with that, because I think,
why I asked the question.
once again, I think this is a very generic statement. The Tongariro domain is a really important part of the town centre environment. It complements the commercial area. It can complement it far more. And I think the staff have stood back from this and tried to write some generic stuff about it. Is that, before I go on, can I ask you, is that correct?
Mr. Carroll said.
Okay, and if you put any improvement I think that would help because it makes it more generic rather than expected. But if I could just go up above that, once again we've got a problem here with names and locations, and if you could bear with me, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that the large area of grass is hardly a policy document statement. If it was grassed open space, it might be. I'm also concerned that you talk about the Tongariro domain in the heading, and then the first paragraph goes straight into the Tongariro North domain. So perhaps it needs a generic statement about where the Tongariro domain is and what area it covers, because it's huge, and that perhaps would be helpful. And say see map, whatever that map is that you've got. The second paragraph, I would like to add in the first sentence for consideration. While this event space is important for its open space amenity and as a recreational asset, because that's been talked about at length through the submissions and in here by the councillors. I don't know what you think about that, Mr. Chairman. And then further down, events on the North Domain and in Riverside Park. And look, this is picky, but what is a town centre operator? Is it a kid with a ukulele standing outside collecting money? I don't think so, but they're actually operating in the town centre and they're doing well. I think what you probably mean is town centre businesses.
Well, it's everyone who operates in the town centre.
Why don't you just say provide direct economic benefits to the town centre?
Or just to the town centre?
Yeah.
Full stop. And further on from that, just little things, but the Christmas Carnival, it's not the carnival, it's the Christmas Carnival I think you're talking about. There may be others, I've forgotten. The home show, capital H, capital S. However, one area of opportunity is to further grow the number of smaller events that use the whole Tongariro domain. Because we do have smaller events on the South domain. I mean, it's a regional garden of significance, and you get people pouring out of buses on garden tours, and that's an event.
Anything else?
And I suggest that your final paragraph is any improvements of the facilities on the Tongariro domain, not just the domain.
Must go good.
I was going to make a mention that the South domain doesn't actually even get a mention in here, and it is part of the Tongariro domain. If you're talking about the Tongariro domain, you actually need to be talking about the whole of the Tongariro domain. There are events on the South domain, and is it not part of the town centre?
It is, and I think Councillor McKelvey with her suggestions about the whole domain activities and those ones that we excuse me, that are solely on the North domain, how she's worded it to me, I see that's making it a lot easier for people out there to understand. Like I said, Mr. Gibbs, you and I know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But, you know, people get, whether it's by choice or just by confusion.
Well, I guess we still mustn't lose sight of the fact that this is dealing primarily with the economic well-being of the town centre, and therefore is looking at those facilities that could be upgraded for the events that bring the economic elements there. Now, I'm not familiar with with how that fits in context with what the South domain is used for on a more passive basis. I'm
thinking about the Lions train, which they want to alter, and I mean that's economic benefit maybe for them, or they put money back into the town. So
or is it more everyday use of that space versus the weekend or event one-offs for a couple of days?
We've been talking of upgrading that train so it goes down that extension of Story Place down into the boat. Better not be careful there. Down towards the water.
the landing reserve.
Down through the landing reserve to the water.
Yes. So there are activities there.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the staff got the message on that one. Openly, Councillor McKelvey?
Just in support of Councillor Gathergood, she's absolutely right. I mean, we have bowling tournaments in South Domain. We have art exhibitions, sculpture exhibitions in the museum and art gallery. We have garden tours to the regional garden of significance. So, you know, really important.
Weddings.
You guys got the message.
Weddings.
55, please.
Can you bear it? Another one?
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you. Second paragraph. It's just this,
Active
the
arts.
names. Yeah, the active arts. I mean, we've made a very big decision about the active arts from their perspective, and we need to say very clearly the benefits of that decision to the public and hopefully to active arts in the longer term. I'm just suggesting second line in the second paragraph, stronger connection between the Tongariro North Domain, Riverside Park, including the amphitheatre. And then I'd suggest something like this, and it's up to you to finalise it, guys. It's not my final wording. It will also open up a significant area of open space to the west of the realigned Redoubt Street. And it's a very big area there. So I'll read it again. It will also open up a significant area of open space to the west of the realigned Redoubt Street. That's just a suggestion. And then going on to the last sentence, or second to last sentence, this flexible space could be used for corporate facilities and other services needed for events in Riverside Park.
Yeah.
Guys, I think we need to, where that amphitheatre is sitting there on its own, be consistent throughout the document, Riverside Park and that sort of carry on. Councillor Hector?
I just have a wee bit of problem with a significant area, because the actual arts buildings, they only sit on approximately just over a quarter of an acre of land, and whilst collectively with it moving it will improve the area, but the actual site in which the arts buildings are sited on, as I say, is only just over a quarter of an acre.
1,000 square metres.
Yeah. So is it significant or is it not? I don't know.
Carol?
I think, as we discussed on the site visit when we stood there and looked at that area, what happens, and I think you just alluded to it, Councillor, once you remove that building and its associated car park, not only do you get the benefit of the open space associated with that car park and the building, but you make the whole area around it that much more usable, and particularly more so with the realignment of the road. So we believe it will actually become quite a significant asset.
Not just the 1,000 square metres in the car park.
We've also, I think they've only got a licence to occupy, but the market has been associated alongside of those arts buildings. So obviously there's got to be some negotiation with them to make that area open. And I know they've moved down into the park, and they like that site, but we have spent some money presently on the existing site that they lease or license. So,
All right, Councillor Fagan?
However, they are also very strongly indicating that they want to stay where they are, down by the river. So that's the other part of it. But then just going back up to around the active arts building and the discussion that we just had about significant area of open space, I would like to think that significant area of open space is not being created by chainsaws.
I don't see any room in here.
There's no, the structure plan wouldn't go to that level of detail anyway.
No. But I'm just making the point, taking the opportunity to make the point.
But one day there may need to be some rearrangement of things to make things work.
Well,
we're doing it elsewhere in the South Domain. It's a normal process with the reserve.
Start, maybe you want to put a tree there and a chainsaw and a big cross across the chainsaw.
No, we wouldn't dare do that.
Councillor McKelvey?
Yeah, in relation to the significant area, it actually is, if you include the term, west of the realigned Redoubt Street.
Oh, yes.
Oh yeah, then it becomes
That's,
significant.
that's all in
yeah.
the same sentence. So if I could just read it again, so just make sure that you've got it. You've got it. No, I've got the wrong page now. I'm sorry. As long as they've got it, that's fine.
Yeah. I've got it.
Thank you.
So just before we move on to page 56, are we on to the readout street bit now?
Well, I'm on page 55, but
Yeah.
Councillor Welsh had his hand up.
Oh, I thought. Sorry.
This is possibly in terms of the actual floor area of the active arts building. It's not a large area, and it's been described as approximately 1,000 square metres. But I think the important thing there, as far as the people in active arts are concerned, is the wording, and they will probably get a lot of comfort by the fact there that they know that the timing of the relocation will be dependent on finding a new home for them and their activities, and otherwise prior to that I think they were justifiably concerned.
Well, Councillor Welsh, that was one of the phone calls I got. I can't remember her name. She thinks she was the secretary about that.
Judy Smith.
That could be the name. She must have been very concerned because she rang me Sunday evening. And you've got to be I've got to be in a very, very good mood when someone rings me on Sunday evening. And it's not because I've just come back from church. And I explained it to her and allayed some of her fears, and I also asked her to contact Mr. Carroll. So I don't. Did she contact you, Mr. Carroll?
She did, and I had a good chat to her and passed on a copy of your resolution.
Yeah,
She was
went
very
away
happy.
a lot more happier than when she rang me. Thank you.
And those words are straight from the resolution.
Yeah, thank you. Now, who was next? Councillor Ufagan, I think you were.
Yes, readout street, cobblestones.
Okay, I did say that we would, you could bring this up here. If it makes you feel happy, just take out the cobblestones, because at the end of the day,
Thank you.
the finer detail, as I said before, will come when whoever's going to make the decision on the design and the surface of that street.
I can just see the cycle race starting off on the cobblestones.
And it just reflects the fact that there might be a different paved surface there. This is not back alley Paris cobblestones. This might be large, which incidentally they have to. They've got to finish the Tour de France on the Paris roads, and a few people come off.
Mr. Gibbs, have you ever pushed a pushchair up across cobblestones?
You wouldn't want to ride a bike on those type of
I have. Yeah.
You wouldn't want to ride a bike on those sort of cobblestones with false teeth, would you? In your mouth open, they'd all fall out.
It's just suggesting simply that the road makeup would have more thought given to it to fit the reserve
So
environment.
let's take that out of there and get on with life.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we break for lunch.
Well,